Hi, this is Ashish from developerhut.net and welcome to Java Design Pattern series. So in today's session we'll be going to see the next most interesting design pattern, which is abstract factory design pattern. So in this session we'll be going to see what is abstract factory design pattern. We will understand the abstract factory design pattern with the help of our small example, right, which is in definitely a continuation of our factory design pattern, right. Then we will be going to see what are the rules or steps to create the abstract factory design pattern, and then we will implement the abstract factory design pattern with the help of our Countrywide car building application. And lastly we're going to see some advantages and the real life example of abstract factory design pattern along with the conclusion. So before we proceed ahead for the abstract factory design pattern, if you are not aware about the factory design pattern, I want all of you to go ahead and check the factory design pattern first, take the good understanding of factory design pattern, and then only then move ahead with the abstract factory design pattern. So if you wanted to know what is factory design pattern, I have created the another session, separate session for a factory design pattern, and go ahead, you can see the link on a top right corner. Okay, you can take the good understanding of factory design pattern and then you can come back here later. I suggest all of you to use the similar link because whatever the example I will be going to cover in this session is based on my previous examples. Okay, so go ahead and take that tutorial first. Otherwise, if you already know the factory design pattern, you can go ahead for abstract factory design pattern. So what is factory design pattern? So factory design pattern is an creational design pattern, and of course it's a very powerful design pattern, right. It's somewhat similar to factory design pattern and mostly it is based on the factory design pattern. Okay, of course it creates the similar type of objects, right, as it's based on the factory design pattern, right. And the most important thing about the abstract factory design pattern is it creates the factories of factory or families of a related object, which is makes the abstract factory design pattern the most powerful design pattern, right. And of course it promotes the consistency between the objects. Anyway, we will going to look into it. So let's have a quick recap on what we have did in our last session. So in factory design pattern we have created a very simple application which we have a similar type of object which is a car, right. So we have created one car interface which has a driver methods and there are multiple implementations of the car, right. So we have multiple concrete classes like a luxury car, mini car and sedan car, and all these classes implements the driver method according to their own implementations, right. Now client is basically calling this driver method, however they need the actual concrete class, right. So instead of creating the direct classes inside the client, we have created one factory class which will help client to get the concrete implementation of the car interface, right. So our car interface is nothing but the the product or a product classes, and factory is basically the creator class or the factory class, right, which will help client to get the actual concrete classes. So now let's go ahead and understand the abstract factory design pattern with real-time example. Now let's say I have four-wheeler manufacturing company who is acting as a client and who is creating two type of four-wheeler. So one is a car category and another is a truck category. So now let's say they are creating the luxury car in the car category region and they are creating the tow truck in the truck category region, right. And now, of course, to get the object of luxury car and the tow truck, they are using the factory class, right? However, now company wants to sell this luxury car and tow truck only in the USA region, right? So company or this particular client creates the USA four-wheeler factory who is responsible to get the object of luxury car and the tow truck, right? So they are happy with this and they are getting the objects of luxury car and tow truck from the USA four-wheeler factory, and they are selling this into the USA region. Now company wanted to explore their options, and now company started creating a different kind of a category in a car and truck, right? So now company created the another category of car, which is a sedan car, and they are started creating the tractor in the truck category. However, company don't want to sell the sedan car and tractor in USA now, right? They wanted to sell this type of car and truck in the India region. So company created the India four-wheeler factory. It's basically responsible to sell the sedan car and the tractor. So this four-wheeler factory will get the object of the sedan car and tractor to the particular client. However, if you see here, every time if company adds any additional car type or a truck type, they need to create another four-wheeler factory, and they again need to embed the code inside the client, right? So instead of doing this, what we will do here is we will create one abstract class or interface, which is four-wheeler factory, right, which is again responsible to get the type of car and truck, right? And all the four-wheeler factory classes will extend this four-wheeler factory, right? And client will use the four-wheeler factory reference, get the different type of car and trucks in a different region, right? So this will also avoids the code duplication in the client region. So even if company add any additional country in this, so let's say if company wanted to add any additional country, for example Italy or France, right, who is selling the sedan car as well as luxury car, and in a truck category they are also selling the tractor as well as tow truck, right? So they will again only create the Italy four-wheeler factory. However, they don't need to add actual code into the client section. Okay, so now let's go ahead and implement this with actual programming example, and we will understand how it saves your code duplication. So before we proceed ahead, let's see what are the rules or steps to create the abstract factory design pattern. So the first rule is we must have the common type of object, which is product classes in our case. So whatever the object that we want at the client side is must be a one type of a common object. For example, the four-wheeler, right, is a common type of object for car as well as a truck category, right? Next is we need the creator or a factory classes who is basically responsible to create the common type of object or our product classes, and they should implement the abstract factory class, right? The next is the factory class must hold the object creation logic, which is similar in our early factory design pattern as well, right? And last is client must use the abstract factory class reference instead of actual abstract factory class. Okay, now let's see how it works. So now let's go ahead and start creating the classes, and we will understand the abstract factory design pattern with the help of this our Countrywide car building application. Okay, so let's create first a common type for product class. So I will create one interface. I will say four-wheeler, right? So four-wheeler, and four-wheeler has one method which is drive. So I will say void drive, right? Now there are multiple types. So we have multiple type of four-wheeler, which is car and truck, right? And both have a different models, right? So let's create a model enum for, let's say, car type. So I will say enum, I will say car model, right? And in car model I define two models. So first, company wants to create the luxury type of car, and there is I will say a default. Okay, so there are two type of car, right? So one is luxury car and another is default car. In the same way, we will also create the truck model. So I will create new, I will say enum, and I will here say truck model, right? And here we are creating two type of trucks, right? So which is tow truck, right? And I will say default truck. Okay, so we have two type of trucks, right? And last enum we need is the location, right? So I will create a location, right? So location, and I will here say currently, yeah, we are only supporting the USA kind of location, right? So USA location. So now we have a car model, right? So we have luxury car, right? And truck model we have tow truck, and of course default, and the USA location, right? Now let's create our product class with the help of all this. So now let's create our first product abstract class, which is car. So I will say create a car, right? I will say car, which will be abstract in nature, and I need the four-wheeler, right? So four-wheeler interface, right? So it will implements the four-wheeler interface. So all the methods inside the car, uh, inside your four-wheeler needs to be implemented by this class, right? Anyway, we will be implementing this drive method once we need it, right? So because car we have created, it's a very abstract in nature, right? So let's add the other related information. So I will add our car model. So there should be the car model, right? So I will say model, right? And there should be location, right? So I will say location and location. Okay, and I will create one constructor, right, which should be called by the concrete class, right? So I will say generate constructor using fields, right? And yeah, that should be it, right? So we have created the abstract class, which is car, right? And this needs now concrete implementation. Now let's first create the complete car concrete classes. Okay, so I have an abstract class car which implements four-wheeler, and the implementation class should also define the what kind of a model it is and what kind of location it is, right? So I will create, so as per our first example we were creating the luxury type of car, right? So I will say luxury car, right? So luxury car, and it should extend the car interface, right? So I will say car interface. So now let's click on finish, right? So now we have a drive method, right? So we need to implement the drive method here, but even before that we need to initialize the abstract car constructor, right? So I will say generate constructor from superclass, right? And I will pass the appropriate value. However, we know this is a luxury type of car, right? So we don't need to pass the car model, right? So you can directly say this is luxury type of car and you don't need to take it, right? The only thing a luxury car don't know is the location, what kind of location this car will be sold, right? So we directly pass the car model, which is luxury, and the location will be coming from somewhere else, right? Now let's override our drive method. So I will say sysout, right? And here say driving the I will say model, right? So model plus I will say car at location, and I will just simply add the location here, location, right? So at location this, right? So this dot model and this dot location, right? So I will just add this. It's not required actually, but I will just add it. Okay, so we have implemented the drive method, right? Now let's create one default car also, so that we if this particular car is not available, it will fall back to some default car, right? So I will just simply copy and paste this, and I will create a new class. I will say default car, right? And I will only simply change the message. It is of course the default, right? And we don't know what kind of car it is. So I will simply add here car not available for location. Okay, so this is default car, so we don't know what kind of car it is, right? It's a fallback mechanism that we are doing. So it will print this message if you call the drive method, okay, and if car is not available. Now, so we are ready with our car model. Now let's go ahead and similarly we will create our truck also, right? So we have created the abstract class car which implements four-wheeler, right? So similar way we will create the truck. Okay, so I will say new class, I will say truck, which will be abstract in nature, and it implements the four-wheeler interface, right? So four-wheeler interface, we do not require a drive method, right? So and here of course there will be a similar thing, right? So I will just simply copy this to save the time, right? And I will simply update, so it will be the truck, right? And instead of car model it will be truck model, right? So let me import this, and this will be of course the truck model, right? In the same way whatever we are doing, right? So we have car model and truck model, and in the truck we are doing the same thing, so we are getting the truck model and the location. Now let's create the concrete class for a truck, which in our case is a tow truck, right? So I will create a new class. I will say tow truck, right? And which will extends your truck abstract class, right? And I will say finish, right? Here anyway we need to implement a drive, but even before that we need to call the super class constructor. So I will create a constructor, right? And here I know this is the tow truck, so model I will pass it directly the tow truck, right? And we don't need a model over here, don't need to take the model over here, right? And here I will go to the luxury car and simply copy the same statement, and I will just update the few parameters. So I will say instead of car, so I will say truck. So driving this will be a tow truck, right? And particular location, at this location, right? So our tow truck implementation is ready, right? Now let's create a default truck as well. So I will simply copy and paste this, okay, and I will say default truck, okay. So and I will go to the default truck, I will go to the default car, and I will simply just copy this and then add it over here, right? So I will say here truck not available for this location, okay. So so that's it. So we are ready with car and truck, right? So we are completely ready with the our actual product classes, right? Now let's go ahead and create the factory method, right? So here as per our old factory design pattern, we have created a separate factory which will take care of the creation of all this object, right? Where client will use that particular factory method, right? So here what we will do, so currently we are only our company is selling only this kind of car in a USA location, right? So I will create a factory class, which is I will say a class, and I will say USA four-wheeler factory, right? So USA four-wheeler factory, right? So first I will go ahead with the old factory design pattern here, and then we will see what exactly the disadvantage of this and how we can apply the abstract factory over there. So we have a four-wheeler factory, right, which will build the car and truck for us. So here I will say public, I will say car, which will return car type of object. I will say create car, right? And here we need to pass the car model, of course, okay. So what kind of car you want here, right? So that model you need to pass, right? So I will say model, right? And here basically we will add our logic. So I will create one car, car is equal to null as of now, right? And I will simply return the car. Okay, and here we will add our switch statement. So switch, right? Here I will say it will be of course the model, right? Now if my car model is luxury, so currently USA only supporting a luxury, right? And so we only add the luxury. So I will say car is equal to new luxury car, right? And I know what is the location for this, because this factory is basically only for the USA location, right? So I will simply pass the location dot USA, right? So we will get this particular location type of car, right? And if nothing is available, so if this model is different one, then in that case what happen, we will simply pass the default car implementation, right? So I will say default car, right? So you will understand this why we are doing this default implementation. That's a very important in this case also. Now let's create the similar one. So we have create car. Now let's create the truck as well. So here we will add, and I will say create truck, right? And here I will simply pass the truck, right? And here also we need the truck model instead of car model, right? And here let's update truck, right? And I will just rename this, right? So in this case what will be the truck type? It will be the tow truck, right? So we have tow truck, right? And here we need to create the tow truck implementation, right? So I will say tow truck, right? I need to remove this. So new tow truck, and location we know, which is USA in our case, right? And I will simply copy, and here I will just add the default truck, right? So default truck, right? So that's it. So let me refactor this a little bit. Yeah, so that's it. So now our USA four-wheeler factory has two methods, which is create a car and create a truck, right? Create car will take your car model, and it will decide which kind of object needs to be returned, right? So it will take the model, and of course we have hard-coded a location, because this particular factory is only for the USA location, right? If that particular model is not fall into this category, then it will return the default kind of car or default kind of truck, right? Now let's go ahead and create the actual client. Okay, so I will say new class, and I will say manufacturing client. Okay, manufacturing client. So or I will simply say a client. Okay, so which will definitely getting the objects and using this object, right? So the first thing is client must know all the three types. So if client wants to use the car or a truck, they should know the model that they want, right? So I will define one car model variable first. So car model, so what kind of car model it is, I will say car model here, and I will say I will define one car model dot, it should be luxury car. Okay, and next is the truck model, right? So I will say truck model, I will say truck model is equal to truck model dot tow truck. Currently client only knows that they are we have only USA kind of car, right? So let's create the location. So location is equal to new, sorry, not new, it's a location dot USA, right? So we have all these three things, right? Let's create the common type of reference also. So I will say car is equal to, I will say null as of now, and then truck is equal to null, right? Now so what we need to do is we need to use our factory class, right? So we need to call our factory methods, right? So now here if you go to our USA four-wheeler factory, right, it has two methods, right? So however we need to create this factory method, right? So let's say USA four-wheeler factory is equal to new USA four-wheeler factory, right? And here what I will do, I will simply get the objects, right? So here I will say car is equal to factory dot get create car, right? And I will simply pass the model, right? So which is in our case it's a car model, right? That's it. And I will say truck is equal to factory dot create truck, and I will say truck model, right? And then I will simply call the drive method of both the car as well as truck, right? So drive method. Now here it's very simple. So if you see, if you run this program, you will get the desired output, right? So you are driving a luxury car at the USA location, and you are driving the tow truck at the USA location, right? So now let's go ahead and create the our next level of car product class. So there is something new now added to the car product class, right? So in this case what we will do, so we will create now sedan type of car, right? So I will simply go here and simply copy and paste this, and I will say this will be now sedan car, right? And in sedan car what we will do, we'll just change the type. We need to also create the type, right? So here I will just add sedan, right? So sedan, and here we need to change the car type, so sedan, right? So that's it. So we'll be driving the sedan car at particular location, right? So this is done. Now let's create the also same for truck as well. So truck model, we have added additional model now, and I will say tractor, right? So I will say tractor, right? And let's go ahead here, and I will say instead of tow truck I will say the tractor, right? Okay, tractor, right? And here I will simply go to the tractor class, and here I will pass the model is should be the tractor. Okay, so we are driving the tractor at location, whatever the location we got, right? So we are ready now. So here currently let's say my sedan car and this are not fall into this category, USA category, right? So I will create I want to sell this type of only these two type of car in India, right? So I will just simply copy and create a new factory which is India, right? India four-wheeler factory, which is basically selling these two type of car, right? So as you see I have copied. So the model will be of course sedan, because we are only selling sedan and the tractor type, right? So I have updated this, and location we also need to add, right? So location I will add it over here, India, right? And if you go here you just need to update your location as well, right? So I will say location will be India in this case, right? So we have new factory here, right? So now if you go to the client, right? So I will go to my client, and here you say we have first created the USA four-wheeler factory, right? And now what we need to do here is we need to create again a new factory, right? So here I will say I don't know what kind of a factory it is, right? So what I will do, I have multiple factories for this manufacturing client, right? So how we can do this, so we will pass the location, we will get the location from somewhere else, right? So how you can do this at the client side is, so I will say it's something like I will simply create one more reference of this. So let me copy this completely, and here let me add it, right? So I will say it's a now India four-wheeler factory, right? So I will say India four-wheeler factory, right? And I will simply call this one, and I will say India factory, right? India type of a factory, right? And I will simply call this, and I will call that particular model, right? So here if you see carefully, if you run this, you can find it out that for India we are getting the car not available, we are getting the default, because the luxury type of car is definitely not available at the Indian type of factory, right? And the tow truck is also not available, right? So here we can also do one more thing which client can do at their end, right? So every time if you add any kind of a new factory at a new location, client needs to update this code, right, which is definitely not a feasible, and this is not definitely our actual objective, right? So what we will do in case of abstract factory, we will create one abstract factory class which both the factory will extends those kind of a class, right? So let's create one abstract class. So I will say four wheeler factory, right, which will be abstract in nature, of course, right? And what we'll do in this case, so we will create two abstract method, which is our create car and create truck. So I will simply add this create car, right, and I will say create truck, right? So create car and create car, which will be abstract in nature, right? So I will say abstract this method and abstract both, right? We will see what is the advantage of doing this, right? Now this four-wheeler factory also helps client to get the type of what type of factory they want, right? So this four-wheeler factory will the implementation of create car and create truck, it depend on that particular factory method, right? So here you see uh, what we will do is, so all my factory classes should extend this class. Okay, so I will say extends, and I will say four-wheeler factory, right? And I will just simply copy this, and I will go to USA four-wheeler factory, and I will simply add it over here. Okay, now the advantage is if you go here at the client side, client only knows these three things, and they only know the product class reference, they don't know what it is, rest of the thing, right? So here they will only create I will say four-wheeler factory is equal to new maybe four-wheeler. Again, still there is confusion which factory he wants and what kind of factory he gets, right? So in four-wheeler factory we'll create one method. So I will say public, I will say static get, and which will of course return the four-wheeler factory, right? So and I will say get factory, and we will simply pass the location as well. So I will say location, which is location, right? And here we will decide which factory they needs to client is asking, and accordingly we will return the factory class, right? So here I will say first I will take an object of four-wheeler factory, right? So reference, not object, so I will say four-wheeler factory, and I will simply return the factory. Okay, and in between we will add our logic. So I will say switch, right? So switch here as per of course what kind of location it is, right? So if it's a USA location, right, so I will say factory is equal to new USA, right? So USA factory, right? And if it's an I will simply call this, and I will say yeah, here if it's India, then India type of factory, right? You can also add a default if you want later point out. However, you need to create one dummy factory over there, right? The same way what we have created for a truck as well as car, right? So default car and the default truck, so you can create it likewise, right? So this will only give me the location. We'll just pass the location, client will pass the location, and it will return the type of factory. So this should be India four-wheeler factory, right? Now let's go back to the client, right, and simply call this method. So I will go to the client and I will say factory dot get factory, and I will simply pass the whatever location, right? And here I will just simply say car, I think I removed those, so car factory dot get sorry create car, and I will simply pass the model, right? And I will say truck, right? Truck is equal to factory dot create truck, and I will simply pass my that particular model, right? So I think I need to update this, right? And I will say truck model here, right? So here you can see now the code is not even more simpler here, right? So client only know very little details about the implementation here, right? So client just need to pass the location and the type of product classes that they want, right? So what kind of factory they want, right? And that's it. So even if now in a future if you add any additional kind of product and factory class in this application, your clients is still not yet affected. So there is very little modification. They just need to add, you know, use the location. Even if location is also is a part of your library, so even if client updates your library, they will get the updated location and they can use it according to their needs, right? So you can see this is the basically advantageous part of the abstract factory. So we have created the, you know, this is a common type of factory even we can say. So in case of factory design pattern, we use the common type of object for a product classes, right? And in case of abstract factory, we are also creating one more layer of the common type of object for the factory classes. Okay, so this is the example for this abstract factory. I hope you understood this, and let's quickly go through the client. So if even if you just update this the location, you will get the appropriate that class. And if that particular this is the fallback mechanism that we have did earlier, right? So you just need to pass it and you will get that particular object or product class object. So we will get this default kind of a classes, and that's the fallback mechanism we have added. You can add this the fallback mechanism wherever you want. It's just for understanding purpose I have added it, right? So this is the abstract factory. This is the very powerful design pattern. Okay, anyway, I will still cover few real world examples after this. Okay, so you can use this abstract factory design pattern wherever you want. However, this is the basic idea behind this. Okay, let me just quickly go through the classes and let's have a quick recap of this, right? So the first, we have created the four-wheeler interface, right, which is all the, it's a common type for all our classes, right? Then we have created the car model, where we are creating the luxury type of car, sedan type of car, and we have a default type of car, right? And then we also have a truck model where we have tow truck, tractor, and the default truck, right? And we also created a enum which is contains the location, right? So USA and India. Then we create the our abstract class for car, right? So which takes the car model and location as a parameter, and drive method is implementation specific, right? So drive method will be implemented by their concrete classes along with calling their super class constructor, so that we can get all the details whenever we want at the concrete class level, at luxury class level, right? So your car model and location is already there in a car, right? So we don't need to add it over here separately, and we can directly use using the inheritance example, right? Then in case of a truck, right, so we have created abstract class as a truck, right, which is very similar to the car, right, which holds the truck model as well as a location, right? And whenever you are creating the actual implementation, right, you just pass the appropriate model, right, and the location, and you implement the drive method accordingly. Then we have created one abstract factory method, right? So to create the object of all of this, we have created a factory, right? So our factory, as we divided into more things, right? So we have created a abstract class, right, four-wheeler factory, which contains the create car and create truck, which is implementation specific, right, according to the factory. And we created one static method which will return the factory of particular location, right? So this will be helpful for client not to change lot of code at their end, right? So here we will just pass the location, and this factory will return the appropriate factory method, right? And next is we have created the actual implementation of four-wheeler factory, like a USA four-wheeler factory, which will only returns those particular product classes which they are providing, right? Even if you can also add a sedan type of car as well, right here. Later point of time, if your company decides to add uh, this type of car, then you can also create this without any change, right? So I'll say sedan car, right? And now sedan is also available for USA location. You will just update this, and even if you see there is no changes at the client side, client can still just need to get the sedan class. The client needs to pass the sedan model, and it will get that particular object, right? So here this is the most important use of your abstract factory design pattern, right? So uh, I hope you understood this. Now let's move ahead and see some real life examples. So now let's look at some features of abstract factory design pattern. So the methods of abstract factory design pattern are implemented, of course, as a factory methods, which we saw. Then both this design pattern, abstract factory as well as factory design pattern, decouples your client from the actual implementation. Okay, right? Either through the abstract type or and the factories, right? So that's the actual goal of both this design pattern, to decouple your client from the actual implementation, right? In case of a factory design pattern creates an object through the inheritance with the interfaces we saw in our earlier example, right? Whereas in abstract factory design pattern, it creates an object through the composition, right? Like a abstract classes. Then now there are five important things which abstract factory consists of. The first is the abstract factory class, which is four-wheeler factory in our case, and then the concrete factory classes, where we have created the USA four-wheeler factory as well as India four-wheeler factory, right? Then next is the abstract product class, like car or truck in our case, and their concrete implementation, like sedan car, the luxury car, the tow truck implementation, and the tractor implementation. And last is nothing but the client. So whenever you think of the abstract factory design pattern, you should consider all these five things. So what should be my abstract factory, what should be the implementation, concrete implementation of this abstract factory class, right? What should be the abstract product, and what should be the concrete implementation, and who will be using this abstract factory and the abstract product classes. Now when to use the abstract factory class? So the first and most important point is, of course, when there is a need to decouple your client from the actual product classes, right? So if you don't want to what kind of a product class your client will get, right? So in that case you can use the abstract factory design pattern. This design pattern is of course useful in a program configuration and modification, and this also enforce constraint about which class must be used with others, which we saw in our car building application, right? This design pattern is easier to implement, but it involves a lot of work when you are trying to introduce any new factory existing framework. Okay, now the real life example, the first just we saw the our car building application, vehicle building application, right? Where we have created a different type of four-wheeler vehicles, right? Then another example can be the GUI factory with a different operating system, like you are creating the GUI like buttons or checkboxes, maybe for the different operating system. Maybe you can say a Windows, and we can say a Linux or a Mac, right? So in that case, the button is your abstract class. However, the concrete implementation can be different depending on the OS implementation, right? Then your XML parsers in JDK, like document builder factory, the transformer factory, or XPath factory internally uses the abstract factory design pattern internally. So I hope you understand the abstract factory design pattern, and as I said in my earlier video session, design pattern is a very interesting subject and very easily understandable. However, when it comes to the implementation, it's very difficult. So I also recommend all of you to do this design pattern, code this design pattern by yourself, and then understand that, because once you code it, you will understand that design pattern thoroughly, and then whenever if you want to apply this particular design pattern, you already know what kind of things to create, or what points we need to consider during applying this particular design pattern, right? So I hope you enjoy this video. So if you think this information is valuable, please do like this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you.